Good morning, grade 8. Welcome to the first session in the second quarter. Today, inshallah, we're gonna start our first lesson in the second quarter. We pass to another branch of science, which is the earth science. So that's the big red book, okay? That's the earth science. So we're gonna start in chapter 3, section 1, what is a mineral? So by the end of this lesson, we should be able to describe the structure of a mineral and describe the two major groups of minerals. That the main two objectives in our lesson. So let's start here, guys, and find what we're gonna do, okay, or what we're gonna learn here. So what a mineral structure, okay, what is mineral made up of? So we could know what is a mineral from the definition here. A mineral is a naturally formed inorganic solid that has a definite crystalline structure. So that means we have some conditions to could call this as a mineral. So first, naturally formed, that means it's a substance that form in nature, okay, or that's found in nature and it happened by some processes. Inorganic, which means, okay, it doesn't form inside the living organisms, okay, or it's not related to the living organism's body. It just happened in nature, okay, without involve of living organism body. So here we said that it's solid that has a definite crystalline, so it must be solid, can be liquid or gas, and it has a definite crystalline structure. What mean by crystalline structure? We're gonna know this later, guys. But just so that's the main, okay, or the are the characteristics of a mineral, or they are the conditions which we should found to call this as a mineral, okay? So here we could find that you can tell whether an object a mineral by asking yourself 4 questions, okay? So what are these 4 questions? First one, is it non-living material? Okay, so it's first should be non-living. Okay, so the second question, is it solid or not? So it must be solid. If it's not solid, so of course not a mineral. And finally, does it have a crystalline structure? Okay, so what mean by crystalline structure? Actually, or quickly here, crystalline structure, it means does the atoms of this mineral have a specific pattern or a specific arrangement, okay, regarding to each others? So that is the crystalline structure. If it has a crystalline structure, so of course it's a mineral. If it's not, so it's not a mineral. And finally, is it formed in nature, or it's just made of lab, or it just made, oh, okay, in some conditions that is not natural conditions? So of course it will not be a mineral. But if it's already formed by nature or in by natural processes, so it will be a mineral. So here, let's see. Let's continue what we're talking about here, guys. So to understand what a crystalline structure, and at the point which we already have, we know that our that's in a mineral should be solid and it's an organic and that's found in nature. They are easy to be understood, but the most tricky part here, what meant by crystalline structure. So what is a crystalline structure? So here, to know, we need to know something about elements and compounds and something like this. So we could say that different, okay, substance or any substance is made up of atom. We know, or we agree about this. Whatever the substance that surround us, whatever it is, it's made of atoms. So regarding to this, we could classify any substance into two major categories, elements or compounds. What are difference between elements and compounds? They depend on the type of the atoms. So element is the pure form, or the purest form of a material that cannot be broken down into another substances, which means it's just made of one kind of atoms. Like for example, when we say oxygen, so oxygen is an element because oxygen just made of oxygen atoms only. When we say hydrogen, hydrogen is an element because it's just made of hydrogen atoms only, okay? So I cannot break oxygen to produce another material, and I cannot break hydrogen to produce another material, or I can get another material from an element in the pure form of a matter just made of one kind of atoms. So just when we have one kind of atoms, they are attached to each other, they form an element like chlorine, bromine, fluorine, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, sodium, calcium, magnesium, the most or the elements which we studied before or which we heard about it in the nature. But in the other hand, we have something we call compound. What is a compound? Actually, compound that is substance, okay, or we said that compound, it just formed, okay, when there are two elements, okay, they are attached to each other, which means when once we have two different, okay, atoms, they attach to each other, they form compound. And in that case, okay, we call that, so for example, like table salt, sodium chloride. So sodium is an element that bonded with chlorine, so the sodium atom attached to chlorine atom and they form a new substance which is sodium chloride. Okay, so we call, in this case we call that, okay, that is a compound. Okay, so here, guys, is we said a compound is a substance made of atoms of two or more different elements joined to chemicals. So again, here to differentiate between element and compound. Element just made of one kind of atoms, so it's just a pure substance. I can break it down into another substances. While compound, it's a substance made of two or more different elements, which means it have different types of atoms, like water, for example, H2O, so it's made of hydrogen and oxygen, sodium chloride, NaCl, so it's made of sodium and chlorine, and so on. So the difference between element and compound, and that should be clear for you. So regarding to this, we said, okay, a mineral that composed of only one element, that means just a mineral made of one element alone, like for example, gold, iron, just alone without any other kind of atoms, without any other element that's not compound, just element, we call this native element. We call this native element. So copper and silver are example of native elements, okay? While here we find that so if the element is not just made of one atom, or that mean if the mineral is not just a native element, or it's not made of just an element made of compound, so in this case we're gonna have different atoms. They are arranged to each other. So these atoms must be in a specific pattern, or they must be arranged in certain manner. We call these crystals, or they form something called crystal, or the crystalline structure. So crystal shape determined the arrangement of the atom within a crystal, and the arrangement of the atom in turn determined by the kind of atom that make up the mineral. So it depends on what atoms are found in the mineral, it will show how this arrangement will be, and that will form a certain shape. We call it a crystal. Okay, so here like this, okay, we have two groups of minerals, that the main types of minerals we're gonna learn about them next time, inshallah. So please study this part well, and if you have any question you can ask anytime.